This is the Nokia N8, the perfect example of why the user experience is literally the most important aspect of a phone. Before we get into why that's the case, I would really appreciate if you guys can subscribe to the channel. Thanks. Anyways, the year is 2010 and Nokia desperately needs a phone that can make a comeback, especially after the iPhone shook the world. Their first touchscreen devices completely fell short. Devices like the Nokia N97 and the Nokia 5800 sold quite well, but they were far inferior when it comes to user experience compared to the iPhone. The N8 was supposed to be the real answer. I don't mean the hardware specifically, but I mean Symbian 3, which this device was the first device to ship with. Symbian 3 was supposed to be the first proper touchscreen OS developed from the ground up to be fully optimized for touchscreen usage. Unlike the Symbian S60 version 5, which was on the N97, which was just like a touchscreen wrapper on top of classic Symbian. And boy did they nail the hardware of the Nokia N8. It wasn't exactly a beautiful device to look at, but it was just superbly built. For a start, it had this anodized aluminum body, which made it feel like a tank, and it came in 5 very distinctive colors, with 2 additional colors being added later on. And it felt like a tank because it was built like a tank. This is arguably one of the most durable touchscreen devices. I would say if there was a touchscreen I'd use without any case and have zero worries about breaking it, this would definitely have to be it. And unlike a lot of the other phones that came at the time where, the manufacturers were obsessed with thinness and keeping it as light as possible, Nokia just built it the good old-fashioned Nokia way. It basically needed to be able to survive the apocalypse, and if I had to bet, I'd say it probably would. The phone was 13mm thick, and for Nokia standards, that was pretty much as thin as they come. But the showstopper was actually the 12-megapixel crazy massive large sensor on the back of this thing. It had Zeiss optics, xenon flash, and could record video for up to 720p resolution. The camera was the very best the industry could come up with at that time, and it was far ahead of its main competitors. Here, have a look at some of the image samples and judge for yourself. The phone also ticked almost every spec under the sun, from its 3.5-inch AMOLED display, to its excellent speaker on the back, to having USB on the go, to 16 gigabytes of internal storage. Almost forgot to mention that it also had a mini HDMI port on the top of the phone. It didn't have the very best cutting-edge CPU and GPU at the time, but Symbian was quite famous for its efficiency and power usage. And Symbian 3, well, it was supposed to be the chosen one, at least for us hardcore fans. We were all super hyped about it and expecting so much. And on paper, everything looked quite good. I mean, it was by far the most powerful touchscreen OS, especially when it comes to how feature-rich it is. It actually had real, proper multitasking at the time, and it also had more options than you would know what to do with. It also had a very powerful built-in photo editor as well as the video editor. You could also connect it directly to your TV and display your files on there if you wanted. Or you could also connect a USB to it if you had the specific dongle, and it would display the contents of that USB perfectly. It also played almost every video and audio file you could think of, so it had so much format support. And to top it all off, it also had quite a few features that were ahead of their time. Things such as always on display, for example. So, after all of this greatness, where did it go wrong? Where do I start? Let's just say that using the Nokia N8 wasn't a great experience. The phone was quite laggy, and scrolling never felt quite smooth. Pinch to zoom on photos also felt so choppy compared to the iPhone's buttery smooth interface. And even though the phone supported multi-touch, which was a first for a Nokia device, using the keyboard was a really horrible experience because the keyboard specifically didn't support multi-touch. Speaking of the keyboard, it also didn't support QWERTY mode unless you were using it in landscape, which is a really dumb decision. As for the web browser, the web browser. It was honestly terrible to use. I mean, using the built-in Symbian web browser felt like taking multiple steps into the past. When it comes to scrolling, when it comes to zooming on text and everything, it was just honestly awful. And that was completely exaggerated if you had an iPhone nearby, because Safari was one of the key points of the iPhone. Don't get me wrong, the web browser was quite powerful. I mean, it even supported Flash at that time, and it had so many advanced settings, but it just didn't work great, and you didn't want to use it because of how slow and how laggy it was. And finally, there was the maze of settings and features. It wasn't easy trying to find anything on the N8. I mean, a quick example that pops to my mind is that if you want to disable vibration for the touch input, you needed to go to settings, profiles, select a specific profile, and then from there you enable the vibration. I mean, why couldn't this just have been somewhere outside, easily accessible? And sadly, there are many other examples of this. This N8 that I actually have over here is running on Symbian Belle, which is the second major update of Symbian 3 after Symbian Anna. And to be fair, it did fix many of the issues that the launch version of Symbian 3 had, but still wasn't up to par with the iPhone. The biggest issue with it is that it was already too late. You can never erase the first impression you give off, especially when it comes to phone reviews. And this is sadly the story of the Nokia N8 in general. Excellent hardware coupled with very powerful software that just wasn't great to use. And this came in an era where the user experience started becoming the most important aspect in a smartphone. This phone came out in a time where Nokia needed to revolutionize their whole lineup. And unfortunately, this ended up just being a subpar effort that was neither here or there. It was supposed to be the first big step in modernizing Symbian. Symbian, let's not forget, was the most powerful and best user experience on non-touchscreen devices before that. And because of how great Symbian used to be, it was one of the key points in buying and owning a Nokia phone before. Unfortunately, Symbian 3 ended up feeling a bit too close to Symbian S60. And maybe Nokia did this because they didn't want their user base to feel alienated or have like a shock when it comes to transitioning, but that was a huge mistake. Nokia needed to be brave. And the sad truth is, they already had the answer somewhere deep within the company. I mean, have you guys heard about Maemo? Maemo was running on devices such as the Nokia N900 and was later reinvented to be called Migo, and it ran on the Nokia N9. And in my opinion, this was probably the best operating system Nokia ever made. It just absolutely nailed the user experience. Nokia should have focused on that, but instead they decided to bet on Symbian. Maybe out of nostalgia and most likely out of fear. Either way, they bet on the wrong horse. And the Nokia N8 is perfect proof of that. It's a proof that even if you have one of the best hardware, coupled with super powerful software that just wasn't great to use and just didn't leave a positive impression on its users, you'll never be able to win people over. But hey, I still love the Nokia N8. Mainly due to the hardware. Honestly, the hardware is just that good. Anyways, that's it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this throwback to a completely different era. If you guys like this format and like me talking about old devices, let me know in the comments down below. I'm also curious to know whether you guys own the N8 and what you guys think of it. I know Symbian probably has some of the most hardcore fans out there and they might not be very happy with what I just said. But unfortunately, this is the way that the world perceived the Nokia N8. If you've liked this video, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.